Thank you. Yeah, take your seats, get comfortable. So I'm going to do a little reading and a little bit ad-libbing, because that's just what I always do. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Wendy Waugh, former Senior Vice President of Sustainability at Theory, and now I am a founder of a Golden Collective Incorporated, which is a sustainability consultancy, impact consultancy, among other things. I'm thrilled to have you for our 5th installment of Good Talks. This is a speaker series that's been presented with Theory in partnership with the Council of Fashion Designers of America. So this is our 2nd year, and it's really exciting. This topic, I think, is going to be a very interesting one for all of us. We launched this series last year to bring the New York fashion community together to address one of the most important challenges that we have, the climate crisis. We have many, and that's one of them. We launched the series, as I said. Our simple goal initially was just education, and we wanted to create a space where we could learn from one another, ask questions, and deepen our understanding. This year, it's a little different. This year, our objective is action, but it's more than just that. It's inspiring each other. It is enrolling each other in what it is that we need to be doing and how we need to be thinking about things. It's collaborating and so forth, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Tonight's session is called Sustainability in Sync. So it's about exploring, and I like this phrase. Thank you, Stephanie, who wrote it. Exploring the power of partnership. So, we're talking about sustainability, but it's so much more than just sustaining, the earth or sustaining things. It's about being partners with each other, partners with everything that we do in life, and collaborating and creating cross-functional integration. Don't forget, the way I look at sustainability is we're sustaining lives. That's really what we're doing, whether it's the planet or whether it's our humanity or whether it's life on the planet, whatever it is. So anyway, this particular session is going to be a little different because we've got a slightly different format. We will have a panel discussion with the panelists that you see up here, but we will then after that have some breakout sessions. And in the breakout sessions, you'll be able to talk about basically your thoughts and ideas on our topic. And the topic really is about breaking down silos to some degree. So it's how do we really shift that? Sustainability has been in its own little silo in many areas. Not in not all companies, but in many. So how do we really integrate it into the organization? How does it become part of, the thinking that is done on a daily basis? And really, what are the roadblocks? What are the challenges that we have? And how do we really collaborate to solve them? We are smart humans. Humanity is smart. Think about what we've been able to do all of these centuries. We've been able to solve problems. We've been able to figure things out. The climate crisis is another one that we can solve. So, the only way we do that is if we really collaborate and talk to each other and come up with ideas and innovate, etc. So that's really what we wanted to do, and that's what this particular event is about tonight. But before we do that, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, where are we climate-wise? The IPCC report in March of 2023 was talking about how, we really do need to have urgent action taken so that we can reduce emissions, 43% by 2030, 65% by 2035, and net zero in early 2050. And we say, well, 2050 is so far away. Well, not really when, if you think about it, we even say, oh my God, it's the middle of July already. Where did the year go? Well, that's what happens. Before you turn around, it'll be in the 2030s already. So we really need to be thinking about this and taking action. Where do we stand today? Well, in 2024 was recorded as the warmest year since global tracking began in 1850. But what does that mean? It's like, okay, you're telling me that, I've got it, it's all the statistic. But if you really look at what's happening just in the United States alone, the floods in Texas, huge. The fact that we've had floods in Nashville, North Carolina from a hurricane. Hurricanes usually happen on the coasts. They don't usually happen in the center of a state. We have, flooding in New York City subways. Longer and more intense fires. Just look at Los Angeles. Even fires in southern New Jersey. Hotter temperatures and impacting everything from infrastructure to factory conditions. So it really is these are, sobering situations that we really have to, take a look and call ourselves to action. What can we be doing to kind of make things different? And, I love this statement that David Attenborough talked about. If we take care of the earth will take care of us. So this is what this is about. It's about taking care of us and life on this planet. So thank you again for being here. I am really, really, really grateful to all of you. And now what I want to do is I'm going to introduce the panelists, and then we'll get into the questions. So first, we have Vanessa Barboni-Halleck, founder and co-CEO and executive chair of Another Tomorrow. And tell us just a little bit about yourself, Vanessa.
So it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm a relative newbie to the industry, so I spent 15 years first in emerging markets finance. Prior to that, I was an Iowa gal. It's a whole long story. But I came into this industry really inspired by the opportunity for systems change. Another Tomorrow is the brand that I founded. I'm on the business end. Our creative director is incredible, Elizabeth Jardina. And 5 years in, I really found that this year was a moment for pause and reflection, based on everything that you just shared and a lot of other really major dynamics. And I'm sitting here tonight, I would say, feeling renewed and incredibly inspired by this moment for renewal, of greater ambition, of some of the work that many of you are doing in this room, really doubling down. So it's an honor to be here. I'm excited to be here. I want to give a big shout out to Dana Davis, who's like the total OG, as many of you guys know.
Yes, exactly.
It's so true.
Yes.
And, sharing is caring, and you walk the talk. So thank you for being a lighthouse to me all along the way. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. That's great. So, and now I'd like to introduce you to a partner of mine for years and years and years, Albert Weisbuch, Senior Vice President. Exactly, right? Yay, Albert. Senior Vice President of Global Production and Sourcing at Theory, and he's been a true partner to me all these years. Albert.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, everyone, for coming. Wendy really inspires me. She's an amazing partner, and she inspired me to really understand and love the sustainability world and incorporate it into everything that we do in supply chain, and taught me a lot about this. And I continue to learn every day from many great partners that I'm working with and from the industry. It's amazing to see so many people coming to this event and caring about the cause, and see how the world is changing and how the mindset of our industry and people globally is evolving. It's incredible, and I'm really excited and proud of this, and I'm looking forward to making a difference.
Thank you. Thank you. And Dana Davis.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, Wendy. Thank you, CFDA, for helping organize, and the Theory team. I'm so honored to be here, and when Wendy told me about the idea behind this and the idea of bringing a large collective of people together to really drive change, that's the thing that inspires me, that so many of us can come together and talk about solutions and the challenges, because we need that in order to figure out some of the paths forward. My work has been grounded in 25 years in design, product development, supply chain, and I spent 15 years at Mara Hoffman. And thank you to Mara to be able to build out what sustainability means, really heart-centered in a brand that was really dedicated to doing the work and wanted to be able to share that knowledge with anybody who was willing to listen. And in the past year, I've moved on into consulting, and I work with a large group of mixed different individuals, from brands, innovators, investors, anybody who's really looking to whether shift their business or bring an innovation to commercial scale, and excited to be able to share my experiences with you all tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mathieu Seller, he's Director of Procurement at Hermes, and also was here too, another good partner of mine throughout the years. Mathieu?
I'm a friend of the house.
Yep, friend of the house.
I used to work with you, Wendy, for many years. Yes, my name is Mathieu Seller. I'm the Director of Indirect Procurement at Hermes. I used to be the same here, actually, for many years, and that's how we met each other, and we partner very closely on anything sustainability. So I'm very grateful to be here. I've been in New York 11 years, always worked in retail luxury. I was at Louis Vuitton. Then I went to Theory, and I came back to Vuitton, and now I'm at Hermes. So my entire experience here is in retail, and always incorporating sustainability in all our procurement strategies. So happy to talk about that tonight.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're going to jump in right now, and we're going to first. This is a question really for all the panelists, but the first question is: what are the challenges that you have faced or are facing, or the roadblocks to accomplishing the company's sustainability targets? It's like we want to really say it like it is, like it's whatever the challenges that you've had and the roadblocks that you've had. So why don't we start with you, Albert?
Thank you, Wendy. There are many challenges in this world in sustainability and how we're implementing in the supply chain. One of the biggest is the cost. Sustainable materials increasing the cost of raw materials, increasing the cost of production, and so on. So one is how do we manage the cost. The second is the lead time, because availability of some of those materials is limited because we're doing traceability, we're doing single farm sourcing, and many things like that, where the lead times could be longer, so we have to manage the cost, we have to manage the lead time. And then there is other aspect of this is the cross-functional partners of how do we shift the mindset. There are businesses and partners of ours who are very advanced and on board with sustainability goals, and they, on their own, kind of getting ahead of this and presenting different options and moving forward. But there are partners who are behind, who don't really understand that, and that's where we need to shift their mindset, to explain why it's important, to say how critical it is, and basically communicate that if they want to be our partner, they need to evolve their mindset and get on board. And many of them are now involved and shifted their way of thinking, and it's incredible to see how it changed their businesses and their operations for better and improved our company as well.
You've said so many really important things in this answer. You talked about shifting mindset. You talked about, sustainability, in terms of adding it into how do you really look at changing things. And I think that's what you've talked about so incredibly important. And I want to come back to mindset in a moment. But before we do that, Vanessa, what have you had in terms of challenges?
I think we've seen really kind of two sides of the coin. On one hand, actually building our supply chains from a blank slate, really from the farm up, has given us an opportunity to actually introduce a lot of efficiencies into the business. So sometimes it does take longer, but you can actually build out this kind of fiber up supply chain with raw materials, with grades, et cetera. And when you have a big carryover component to your business, that can actually reduce risk and be very efficient. On the flip side, we found that as we've grown, of course, there's a novelty mindset to fashion, and we do need a dose of that. And so that's where we, as a smaller business, have hit some of those roadblocks. So if we want to develop new fabrications with the same level of standard, single origin sourcing, traceability, et cetera, sometimes you're hit with really huge MOQs or significant lead times. So we're kind of split as a business. We have tons of efficiencies on the one hand, and then as we're introducing some of these new novelty fabrics with the same standards seasonally, it's tricky, and we have to really play with those proportions.
You both have said so much in just your answers, and I just want to point out one thing, and then we'll continue. But the fact that you basically are talking about doing things very differently than the way we in the industry have done them in the past. Just the single origin, just directly to a farm, is very different than the way we've done it in the past. So the fact is, we're here to talk about coming up with innovative ways to do things that actually will accomplish our sustainability goals and also build our businesses. So it's kind of like, that's why I keep coming back to the integration of both. And Albert, you were talking about it so beautifully also in terms of, the fact that some of the things that you're doing with your suppliers, it's actually better for them and ultimately better for the company. So this is a very, very, very important conversation. So I could keep going, but I've got to stop talking. Let Dana say something.
I wanted to give maybe specific examples of challenges because I think what happens a lot of times in this space are, and a lot of me and my friends talk about this, the unintended consequences. And you have these kind of goals, right? You're looking at your sustainability strategy, and maybe you're focusing on reduction or let's say packaging. And something that we did years back was be like, okay, we're going to remove plastic packaging out of our products. And so we worked with a vendor, we created a compostable packaging, and then every retailer was like, well, what are we supposed to do with this compostable packaging? And every consumer was like, well, cool, we don't compost in our house, we don't have access to composting, what are we supposed to do with this? And what we realized was that our retailers who maybe had a waste stream already set up for their poly bags, they no longer could separate out, they couldn't put these inputs into that waste stream because it would contaminate it. And now we needed to figure out how to take those back and find a supplier who could help us compost it. And so we thought we were making the right steps forward, but then what ended up happening was it caused a lot of disruption. Another similar situation is, we were really trying to remove spandex out of our supply chain as much as we could. So we were making our knitwear, and we're like, okay, how do we make these as natural as possible? And we took out the spandex, and the sweaters within 2 years' time were no longer holding their shape and form. And so I'm giving those realistic examples because it's like you think about, you're like, okay, we want to do good, we want to follow this strategy, but then what ultimately happens is sometimes you have to veer from what that is and kind of come back to that and think, okay, is part of the sustainability strategy the durability of this garment? And so the challenge is always being able to be kind of flexible, and that can be really hard for a lot of teams. And then staying educated on how you're going to tie back what you're doing into that strategy. So new materials or educating your supply chain partners, or I think the education piece is still really challenging.
Yeah, I think it is too, and it's so critically important, education. But Matthew, let's talk about, your challenges. I think there's some that you
Well, especially, for me, for procurement, of course, the challenge is the cost, because sustainable options cost always more money. So the challenge is to create a business case to show that in some situation there is an upfront cost, but there is a benefit, in the end. So I think the challenge also is to convince your upper management and the company to be willing to invest in that solution, knowing that down the road there is a benefit. We're also relying on our vendors to provide sustainable solutions, and not all of them are equipped to do that. So it's a lot of challenge and a lot of patience and time to have and to spend with our vendors to make sure that they meet what we require. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest challenge for us.
Yeah, exactly. Again, educating them, educating everybody in your own organization. I want to come back to something that Albert was talking about in terms of mindset. And I'd like you all to talk about this also. But, we talk about having to change our mindset. And so the question is, what is the mindset we need to change? Don't answer it yet, because I have another one right behind it. And then the other one is, how do you change, or how do you enroll somebody in thinking differently? We have a tendency, as many people that I know at least have a tendency to, I believe that this is the way to go. Like, I'm looking this way, so that's the right way. And then if you're over there, you're seeing something very different than I am. And if you're over there, you're seeing it very differently. We all have different viewpoints, but we all have this way. It's like, this is the right way. So if you're going to change your mindset, it means that you need to at least be open to, well, what is that person seeing over there? And what is that person seeing over there? And maybe there's an idea from over there that I can be using. So, how do you get people to open their minds to really shift it?
I'll jump. I think one of the first things that we need to do is understand the perspective of each other. Whether it's your internal teams, and maybe we can talk about that, and then also your supply chain partners. But within your internal teams, if you're on the sustainability side, or if you're on the production or procurement side, you have your own goals, and you need to achieve those goals within the company. On the sustainability side, you're really trying to get somebody to shift how they're doing something, but maybe the first step is understanding how they're currently doing it.
Yeah,
so a really open
important
conversation, so you have an understanding of why they're doing something.
Right.
And once you have kind of the why and the how, maybe that's when you can have a dialogue around, is there a different way that you could do this, or how can I support you in thinking of a different way?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, understanding their challenges.
Right.
So that you can then try and help them, solve their challenges and also have them see what it is that you're trying to accomplish as well. It's kind of like, that's what I call partnership, the true partnership, a kind of extreme version of what I've got your back, you've got my back, but it's here, it's really a matter of, I need to understand what's going on with you so that you can understand what I need and we can come up with a solution together.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine, Albert, with you and Wendy, right? Like you guys, I'm sure there was moments where you guys could have butt heads, and I'm sure maybe you did, but it was
Always very nicely.
right? But you also know that you're ultimately hoping for the same outcomes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. It's always a difficult conversation, and we're trying, but what's important is to understand why we're doing it. In our business, we make product for our customers, and we all have customer in mind as number one. Modern customer cares about sustainability, but modern customer also, to your point, doesn't want to have a product that doesn't hold the shape in 2 years. So we have to make sure that we resolve this kind of contradictions where we are improving the quality of the product, we're making it better, at the same time we're making it more sustainable. So, and that's where we have to use our technical knowledge, our expertise of our partners on how to figure this out, because that's what makes a difference. But what's important in this conversation to me, always to have in our world customer in mind and have a same goal, same company philosophy, and share this philosophy with our partners. To see, and philosophy evolves as the industry evolves. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, nobody would be talking about sustainability, or the few people that did, nobody listened to them. But now the world changed. Sustainability becoming a common practice and everyday thing that we all think about, and it's incorporated in everything in our industry and in the world. So world changed, and we need to continue to evolve, incorporate in our philosophy, and part of our philosophy is huge, is sustainability.
No, that's great. Vanessa, I know that your company is so focused on sustainability, everything that you do. How did you embed that in your organization? What is it that you do, and how do you work with your staff so that that's part of what they think every day?
I mean, it was really the only rationale for me shifting gears. I kind of fell in love with the problem. I was really shocked coming from finance when I saw how much time, energy, and resource was going into solving the energy transition, for example. And when I started to learn about the stats within fashion, the magnitude of the problem, the complexity of the problem, I thought there was a huge opportunity. But that also meant that the solutions had to be more systems-oriented and also mirror that complexity. So, we started out with a really rigorous framework around human, environmental, and animal welfare because we felt like that was really the through line. And then took a very science-based approach to how we were going to source across those three categories. And that was the starting point. Nothing got to start before that was in place. Now, we had to stress test a lot of that in the early days, and we failed more often than we succeeded before we actually figured out what worked. But ultimately, single origin regenerative sourcing became our North Star. And how could we build those supply chains literally from the farm up, from a blank slate? And then thinking about end of life, circularity, leveraging digitalization technology for transparency and resale. And so we really kind of took a farm to closet to closet to closet framework to how we built the brand, and we've stuck with that over the last 5 years.
I think it's fantastic, amazing, really impressive. And so my question is, the people who join your company as you go forward, they're not coming from that mindset unless they are, which there are some companies out there that definitely are, but if they're not coming from that mindset, how do you talk to them? What do you say to them? How do you bring them along to this is a criteria we use for every decision we make, so to speak?
There's definitely, an early onboarding that everyone goes through, but I would say, to a person, people join us because they're excited to have the opportunity to do things differently and to take their unique skill set and experience and bring that invaluable resource, to us. And I think what's been really helpful internally, and this is something that I have to remind myself because, you get into the weeds and it's like one foot in front of the other, is that having a really coherent North Star of what like not just okay looks like, but what like amazing looks like is incredibly motivating. And I think from a mindset standpoint, my provocation would be we have such an opportunity to change the baseline. You know, I was just speaking to a bunch of students the other day, and I was kind of disheartened to hear them say, oh, well, you know, it's impossible for a new brand to be sustainable, and so how do you kind of get more sustainable along the way? And I said, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like, you're bringing something new into the world. How is it, you know, why wouldn't you want that to embody all of your values? And so I think that we have just a tremendous opportunity as an industry and within our companies, and I certainly, you know, something that I provoke ourselves to do is just, what does amazing look like? And then that roadmap to get there is so much more exciting than like, oh, could we do something like a little bit less bad, maybe?
I think everybody really wants amazing. It's like when you create something, you know, that you've worked on and it's amazing. Think of the satisfaction and the fulfillment you have, you know, when you're done with it, as opposed to it's okay. Yeah, kind of like falls flat, right? Yeah.
And who cares if it takes you 5 years to get to amazing? It's like a lot more motivating than like, oh, it took us a quarter to be like this much less bad. It's like, wah, you know.
Right. Exactly. So, Mathieu, I know that, you know, when you were here, we were collaborating on some very interesting things. You want to talk about that?
The paper mailers?
Yeah, maybe.
Yes, it was one of the examples, but I think that was probably the one we were the most proud of. That was to replace actually some of our packaging boxes for e-commerce into paper mailer bags that were thinner, with less material, and with more recycled content. So there was an upfront cost, obviously, based on that, but that's what I was referring to earlier, that there was a benefit in the end because we were paying less shipping costs because of the volume and the weight and the space. So that's what I was referring to earlier about sometimes it, you know, appears to be more costly, but we have to create like a total cost of ownership and understand like overall, in addition to being more sustainable, there is also a cost benefit. So
Yeah,
it took us a long time because we had to redesign everything and get a lot of like approvals, but in the end we succeeded. So I was very proud of that.
Yeah, and there were other items that you were working on also, like...
Yeah, we had like the hangers, the poly bags, which was another level of complexity and challenges that we didn't overcome at the time, but...
Exactly, but I also want to just point out the collaboration that you had with the sustainability team at the time, and then also with logistics, because
Yes.
logistics was a very important part of that conversation also.
Exactly.
They were the ones who were testing it and also really trying to see, does this really make sense? So it's like, here again, when we talk about partnership and collaboration, it's like if we don't have that, it would never have happened.
Yeah, and
right?
the marketing team as
And the
well,
marketing
and
team.
the e-commerce team, obviously. Yeah.
Exactly. Perfect. So I want to just come back again. I'm not done with the enrolling departments because I think that's such an important conversation. And, you know, Dana, I'd like you to just talk about, you know, with the companies that you've worked with, or is, you know, how do you talk to, you know, other departments and have them look at it, not just from the perspective of, yes, I'm going to help you out, because this is not about to help you out. Whenever I hear that, I'm going, not really, it's not really the case. But to have them actually take ownership, you know, in other words, take the responsibility on, which is hard enough already because everybody's so overworked and there's also a lot of overload in their jobs. But how do you inspire them, you know, to say, yes, I want to do this?
Well, I think you have to start with kind of the conversations that you're having, right? The why, the how, but it's also the language that you're bringing into that conversation and getting a sense, again, for what their pain points are, but knowing that your goal, if you're on the sustainability team, is to reduce the friction internally, and that means, again, like understanding what are the challenges that individual has. And I love that you bring up, right, you're like procurement with logistics and operations and understanding, and then there's a win of cost savings. And those kinds of things can really happen, but we all tend to operate in silos, and we're all very busy, and we have our own goals that we have to achieve. But I think it's about how do we as an organization set up some type of process where everybody is aware of what's happening internally? And that can be your company has a calendar, right? And if you're the sustainability person and you now know that you need to ensure that the right marketing tools are being given, or even rewind that the design team is looking at the right sustainable fibers, you need to know when's the right time to have that conversation with them. If I approach a design team and say, okay, here's this new fiber, I want you to start working with it, and like, okay, well, the collection is due in 3 weeks, what do you expect me to do, right? They're gonna look at me like I'm crazy. So again, it's really understanding how other people are operating and then not going to them and saying, well, you have to do this. It's again, saying to them, okay, what are you thinking? What's the direction of the design? Are there, is there some type of intention behind what you're doing? Or you go to your sustainability team, what are the suppliers doing, right? Because the production team has the closest relationships to the suppliers. And the relationship piece there, right? Knowing what your suppliers are doing. Maybe they're working on a really innovative finishing, and the design team won't know that unless that's being brought by the product team. And so how do you have that conversation at the right time and in a way that feels collaborative is key. And I think that the reducing of the friction, so supporting each other and knowing what everybody's responsibilities are.
Yeah, I think that's good. And the thought I had as you were talking is also having all the teams have on one of their lists, on their list of what they do on a daily basis, have a line item, meaning what is the sustainability of it. So it becomes just one of the criteria that they use when they're thinking about it. Yeah. So it also, so if that, in addition to the sustainability team coming to them at the right time. So if there's a way that it could be like a line item, like what's the sustainability criteria? Because on a daily basis, there's all these decisions that are made. Right. Is sustainability one of those things that are part of the decision-making process? I don't think that's embedded enough yet.
Right, and some organizations might not even have a sustainability team, right? So it's the responsibility within those departments. Right. We were trying to, we're looking at job remits and seeing how do we add sustainability into this without kind of adding additional workload, but getting them to think of whatever that one responsibility is already in their job description, how do we shift the language in that to incorporate sustainability?
Right, exactly, exactly. Albert, I know you're doing a lot of, embedding it in different parts of your organization at this point.
Yes, Wendy, it's truly a cross-functional effort. We have to make sure that every department, from R&D and product development to design to production to marketing to sales, everyone on the same page and believe in the same cause and how we, as you said, embedding it into our process. During your time here, you set up a lot of processes and really shifted the mindset of a lot of people on how we're incorporating it. We developed a lot of things. If we're developing wool, it has to be RWS wool first, and then we moved further and it's now traceable, and then it's a single farm, and then the animals are fed in a certain way to reduce CO2 emission. There is so many great things that we are doing, and now it's a standards. If it's wool, it's that. If it's cotton, it has to be this. If it's linen, and so on. So embedding this kind of guidelines into our product creation process helps to get everyone on the same page. And that's incredible work that you and the team have done.
Well, and you are. We all are, actually, I think, doing a great job. Mathieu, so what about in your areas that you're working at Hermes and Louis Vuitton? How have you thought about sustainability?
So actually now at Hermes I'm working on a sustainable procurement policy, which is around 4 different pillars. One is ethic and compliance, because it's also part of sustainability. Sustainable relationship with vendors. Historically, we've been working with vendors for a very, very long time. There is this really collaboration as very the essence and the DNA of the brand. Obviously, environment, all the different environmental aspects, but also social responsibility and local sourcing, which is very important for us, supporting local communities, and being socially responsible. Diversity and inclusion is part of that as well, of that pillar. So we're working on that right now, and then we're going to develop it by category of services. What are the exact requirements that we will have from our suppliers for store construction, for communications, for events, for logistics, for IT. So it's very exciting. And for me, sustainability is definitely a decision maker in the decision to award a vendor or not. We also assess our vendors in terms of sustainability efforts. We have an online solution that we ask all our vendors to complete with a questionnaire. And it gives us some strategy as well. You know, when we have different vendors in the same field, we want to make sure that our vendors share our values the same as us. And we want to work with vendors who actually are taking environment very seriously. So the data is super important for us.
That's great. Very impressive. I want to talk a little bit about, you know, how if you know, I want to ask this question to you, Vanessa. You know, if you have a company where there's a CEO is not as focused on sustainability as obviously you and your company is, how do you speak to them? How do you talk to, let's say, somebody who considers it not even really as part of their job at the moment or part of their company at the moment? Like, what kind of focus do you do? Do you speak about just business risk, or what do you talk? How do you talk about that?
Is that working? There we go. I think it really helps to understand what they care about. You know, so what's important to you? And then look at it through the lens of their values and how you can connect. Because I don't think that this is an imposition, right? It's a collaborative journey. So that's where I would start, is really asking questions. You know, what really matters to them, and then you can figure out how it fits in. But I do think that you know, it's hard to see what you don't see. So in addition to that conversation, creating some positive examples of like what that vision could look like in the context of that particular business, I think can be really exciting, because otherwise it is really, really easy to focus on cost or friction or timelines. So I think that it would be really that combination. But individuals have made immense change in companies that are not top-down sustainability focused. So that's something I also really reinforce.
I want to just, I think also the business case piece that you touched on is so important. So if you want to have a conversation with your CEO or your CFO, and you really need to have the facts laid out in front of you and utilize some of the data or the tools that exist. You know, there's a framework, the ROSI framework, Return on Sustainable Investing framework. You can utilize that, look at that, see the business cases that they have in there that show, okay, maybe if we look at different ways of, I know that we have Shona from Eileen Fisher in here, they utilize that to show the difference of how they were transporting their goods and the investment shift that was made internally. So I think you really have to be able to speak their language in a way, but you got to talk about the bottom line if you're having that conversation with a CEO who's maybe not as interested.
Yeah, and I think like don't be afraid to recognize like sell-through is as much a sustainability statistic as it is a business metric. And I think the more that one can demonstrate that some of those core business KPIs sit in both categories, it can really help to bridge, and it helps everyone understand that they're really on the same page.
I think what's important is also to mention that brand needs to be relevant. The industry is shifted. Sustainability is not unique to the few brands who care and doing it. It's becoming a standard in our industry. And the companies who don't care about it, who are not changing their way of working and their product, they're just going to be left behind. They're not going to be relevant.
Yeah, this is great. I think that we've focused on some really, really, really important points with all of your answers, which I'm very, very, very happy about. You know, understanding the other person's perspective, understanding, like how they think. I think that's so critically important, and collaboration and partnership. I mean, if we have this, I think it's going to make such a difference in terms of us embedding sustainability, but quite frankly, also it's going to make a difference in all your lives. Because if you just think about collaborating with those people around you, being partners with those people around you, it can actually make a very big difference. This has been wonderful. Is there any one thing that you would like the audience to know other than what we've talked about? You don't have to have anything. This is the last question. I didn't give him this question.
Okay,
This
I'll
is
just
like,
say, I
this
really
is like,
think it's like business model as much as sourcing, and just like really encourage that broader dialogue around repair, circularity, et cetera. I think it's an overall rethink merchandising strategy, and there's really an opportunity for sustainability to de-risk businesses. So I think looking at the way that risk drives waste within business models is a really interesting opportunity.
good point. I know, I love that too.
And I think sustainability is more than ever very important, especially in the current climate where we are going backwards. So I think we have a duty, I think, to make that happen. So I think we should, make even more efforts than before.
I agree.
And be okay with failing, right? I think to Vanessa's
Right.
point earlier,
Good point.
right? It's like we're going to make mistakes along the way. We're not perfect, but progress over perfection. And we need
Absolutely.
to be doing this work. And however that looks with your supplier relationships, with bringing a new material to market, we've got to keep moving forward.
Absolutely. Albert?
Yeah, it's critical for us to understand that we can make a difference. Every individual who works in a company can influence upwards. It doesn't always have to come from CEO. We have to continue to drive initiatives. We have to continue to care, support each other, and we can all make a difference.
Thank you. Well, thank you, amazing panelists. I think this has been a very interesting conversation, right? Thank you. So now we're going to have something, as I said earlier, we're going to have breakout sessions. And you all have a little color code on your name tag. And each table has a color, so you'll go to that table and you'll be with a number of other people to talk about anything that you found interesting in this conversation. Or there's some each table will have a table lead, and then probably in about 25 minutes we'll come back together and talk about if there's anything that you've all came up with, brilliant ideas, great collaborative whatevers. Anyway, okay, let's go to the tables.
One of the big things we were discussing is how do we educate departments in sustainability? And the challenge is when you're at a really large organization that has multiple private labels, and then you are also a large retailer, and how do you do it in a way that's engaging and you're not enforcing it on the departments? And something that was brought up is how do we really embed sustainability KPIs into bonus structures, and how that gets people to shift the way that they approach their work. Yep. And it opens up a lot of collaboration and a lot of conversations. We discussed, and within that bonus structure, kind of talking about how it can, hit many different departments and those goals. And then the difference of when you're in an organization that it's top-down versus bottom-up, and if you have a top-down approach, it's really embedded into the organization in a very different way, and it brings a lot of cohesiveness. And so there was a lot of wins in that scenario versus when we discussed the bottom-up, and it felt like a much harder struggle.
I'm just so inspired hearing everyone share, even little things. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to consider if we've arrived at a place of achieving sustainability, but hearing all these small wins is really making me feel like we are. But something that Natsai at our table shared was the concept of incentivizing learning and creating
Good
an
point.
award system. I know, so cool.
Love it. Love it.
And because sustainability is such an exciting topic, really creating this space for people to think abstractly, but also create an opportunity to kind of give themselves an edge within their regular role, but kind of in a different vein, can help them kind of get credibility and be able to kind of talk about their creative thinking and problem solving and diversify kind of how they're expressing their role. So
Great.
I thought that was super inspiring.
Learning is great, but sometimes action has to start without even knowledge. So we talk about like freestyling, and maybe this was like back in 2020. So getting action done is also very important, and as I think Dana said at the beginning, practice, the perfection, it has to be, not the main objective, but action needs to happen as well.
Having rooms like this where we can have these conversations across organizations to say, hey, there's this material, hey, there's this vendor, hey, there's this farmer. If we all pull our resources together, we can actually create structural systems change that trickles down to all of the players and the smaller brands that don't have the buying power compared to when we put our heads together. Also, there was a mention of phoning a friend, the idea of like being able to call each other and say, hey, I'm doing this thing, what do you think about this? And having someone who's an expert on a specific thing that's a friend in the industry tell you, hey, avoid that, do this, is so hugely invaluable. And there's no maybe incentive within your role in your business, like from your job, to call someone from another organization, but that's how we will all create this change. And then lastly is focusing on how we tell our stories in an artful way that will allow people to be moved to change. We are in the business of glamour, of magic, of showmanship. How do we use those things that our industry is known for good?
One of the takeaways from the conversation, at least for me, was how interesting it was. I'm going to use you as an example. You're 8 months into working at Ralph Lauren, but you were talking about your experience coming out of school and being challenged at school to learn more about the business of fashion, and also being encouraged to, the sky's the limit, I think you said, or, your wildest dreams can come true. Use your imagination. But then when you get into corporate America, those dreams are kind of quickly crushed because it's all about the bottom line and ROI. And so perhaps how do we reframe educating the fashion community? Is there an executive level of education? I think that's a really interesting concept.
It is.
And it seems like the students that are coming out of American universities and colleges are learning a lot, and Kay's in our group and Anne's in our group to kind of speak to that. But what is this executive education we kind of need to help get these juices flowing?
We talked a little bit about some of the wins, and it's clear that the creative manufacturer relationship and problem solving is really core to that, and a lot of pride where the solution lands in a product that is as good or often better, and sometimes at cost parity, which was exciting. And I think key points of friction were really in planning. So specifically around lead times, even when there's intent can die when the planning doesn't align. And MOQs as a real, pain point, and again, that kind of need to work that into long-term supplier relationships and merchandising. And then we had a robust conversation around end of life and repair, as well as being really integral solutions.
This space that theory creates, I think now more than any other time, is so important and vital for us to, as was said by Vanessa and others, to use this moment in time to reaffirm, to reassess, to reset, and to stay the course. And that is only possible with each of you. There are so many experts in this room. It's really overwhelming. I'm 32 years into my fashion journey and about 15 into, I guess, sustainability journey. But the power of you is everything. So I hope that after today, the conversation can keep going. But again, at a time when cost, access, economic, resource barriers, they may feel like they're looming larger than ever before. And in many cases, whether it's the boardroom or out in the field, they are. But that does not mean that we can't still keep focused on the North Star and make progress together. But I think, again, as I was mentioning, I would like us to all leave today and remember that we can only exist if we are here with active advocacy to protect nature, to protect our planet. And if we keep our eyes set on that, I think we'll be good. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah.